Video about Alaska fly fishing. It's an introduction, and when you're done watching, we hope you'll have a good feel for what it's like. The idea is that if you know what you're in for ahead of time, you can get the most out of your angling experience. What you'll be seeing is a mix of fishing, instruction, and fly tying. We'll take you to a variety of rivers and let you see a little of what fishing for Alaskan salmon and trout is all about. You'll visit the Alagnak River that flows into Bristol Bay. It's one of the great destinations on the Alaskan Peninsula and has prolific runs of all 5 species of salmon, plus excellent rainbow trout and char fishing. Here, we'll get a chance to see some hot action on both king and chum salmon. We'll also travel to the Kenai River on the Kenai Peninsula. This is perhaps the most fished river in all of Alaska. Here, we learn how to intercept sockeye salmon with pro guide Fred Talene and take the time to make a cast or two for trout and char. For our last stop, we'll drop in over the glaciers of southeast Alaska and visit the Kikluk, halfway between Cordova and the Yakutat. This short little system has big surprises in the fall when silver salmon invade. You'll see how big streamers and topwater pollywogs can do the trick. As for information, we'll deliver a couple of different lessons on casting and on fishing. You'll be instructed in the use of both sinking and floating fly lines for Alaskan salmon and trout. We even have an underwater look at how these lines perform. As for flies, we have an overview of what patterns are used for what species. We'll also let you in on 5 of Alaska's top producing creations. They're tried and true, and you'll see in detail just what goes into an effective Pacific salmon and Alaskan trout fly. Several people will join us to help you get the drift of what Alaskan fly fishing is all about. Terry and Wendy Gunn of Lee's Ferry Anglers in Arizona will tell us a little about flies and a lot more about how to cast and fish them. Terry and Wendy fish Alaska every year and are great instructors. Bob Shearholtz is one of the most experienced tyers of Alaskan flies you can find. He's supplied the guides at Katmai Lodge on the Alagnak River for years. He shows us some deadly and durable patterns that will consistently take salmon. We'll also get a chance to fish with Jim Teeny. Jim has his own company that makes and distributes salmon and trout flies, as well as fly fishing lines. Jim has some helpful hints on how to fish Alaskan salmon that come from years of what he calls research.
Reel, Wendy, in one line it would be an 8-weight. I think that's the perfect size rod for all the salmon fishing. And if I had one fly line, it'd be this T300, the Teeny 300 shooting head line.
Me too. Now, if we were going to do trout fishing, I'd want to take a 9-foot 6-weight rod, weight forward floating line, standard typical 9-foot leaders, 5 and 6X tippet. Well, I don't know about 6, but
same thing we use at Lee's Ferry.
You bet. Now, here's some flies we've got, Terry, for Alaska. Let's see. There's a lot of salmon patterns.
These guys here, Wendy, are all traditional king salmon patterns. This one here, the large glow bug, the hackle around the glow bug, a purple people eater, I used to call that. And these, of course, here, you recognize these flies.
T-Gun Salmon Series.
And we tie those in different colors, and they will catch any salmon in Alaska.
Now, what would you use this for?
That's also a king salmon fly. We'll use that whenever the king's just coming into freshwater out of a salt.
Okay, well, I recognize the egg-sucking leeches.
Egg-sucking leeches are great salmon flies, also a great trout fly.
Yeah, and of course the Montana Brassy works great for the sockeyes.
The sockeye, we've caught a lot of sockeyes on that over the years. A couple of more rainbow flies here. This is a smolt pattern that we use whenever the fish are, the smolts are moving out to the ocean and the rainbows are keying on those. And look at that guy, it's a fry pattern. which also works very good at times.
Now the smolt patterns work best earlier in the season.
Right, whenever they're moving on their way out to the ocean.
And then later in the season, as the salmon move back up into the rivers, then we start using glow bugs.
Notice we got several different sizes and colors of glow bugs here. You always want to try to match the salmon, the egg size and color to the species of salmon. That there would be a larger one, like a chum salmon egg, or this is a king salmon egg, and the little pink guys would be the sockeye salmon eggs.
Okay, and then of course later in the season then you start using a flesh type fly.
This imitates the flesh from the salmon as they're decaying, and the rainbow's really chowing those guys.
Well, here we have a sculpin pattern. Now that works all year.
All year long.
Well, here's some samples of some flies and the different equipment that we use.
Wherever you head off to in Alaska, if you're going to exclusively fly fish, you'll end up on a river. What you'll be fishing for will depend upon when you're there and what species are available. It's good to remember that when you choose the time you go to Alaska, you're also choosing the species of salmon you'll be fishing for. This consideration is something Jim Teeny doesn't have to keep in mind because he goes to Alaska all the time. He seems happiest when he's fighting fish like this king salmon he's battling on the Alagnak River.
I've got a 400, a T400 on. I got about a 4-foot leader. This is a good spot if we can get it in that quiet water.
Unless you're on a river that is small enough to contain a fighting king salmon, or one where the banks are wide open, you'll be chasing your king in a boat. It's an exciting encounter, and one the fish can break off at any time.
Look at it. Ooh, big red.
Salmon appear in the river in the same order every year, starting in June.
That's a hen.
First to show are the Chinook, or king salmon. As you'll find out, every salmon has two names, one used by most of us and one used by Alaskans.
Well, I think let's get it in this calm water right below
Where
the
you
stand.
fish for kings, as we'll call them, will depend upon how long that particular run or migration of fish has been in the river. The entire mass of a salmon species that comes to a particular river is called the run. A portion of that run that shows up, the result of tides or other environmental factors, is called a push. You want to be on the river when a push of fish has just arrived.
Yeah, we get to the other side, we'll be in better shape.
If the kings are fresh or bright, they're just in from the ocean, and you'll probably be seeking them downstream. At first, they hold in deep and more turbulent troughs and have to be fished with lines that sink quickly and go to the bottom. Flies are attractor patterns that can imitate natural foods the salmon have recently encountered in the ocean. Finally, when the kings move to their beds, they'll be accessible in shallower water, usually 4 to 6 feet over a gravel bottom. These commonly long, straight stretches of river where you'll find the salmon spawning are the beds and are also called redds.
Usually, you know, you can get good angles on it, but this isn't good at all.
You have to have a fast sinking line, but not quite as heavy as needed in the deep. Here, the kings are concentrating on reproduction and protecting their nests. Flies have to be bold enough to break the king's dedication to the tasks at hand.
Good job.
Big and bright patterns are common choices, as are egg-type flies.
Pretty good fighter.
Bob Shearholtz is a professional tyer and has worked at Katmai Lodge on Alaska's Alagnak River for years. Because he is tied for an entire Alaskan Lodge staff, his flies are quick to tie and durable. Most importantly, they work. And even if you don't tie, it's worth seeing in detail how they're put together. His creation for kings starts like most all his salmon patterns, that is, with some weight to get them down. He uses a lead wire wrap as a foundation and works from there.
Tie a king fly called a Sarp Seducer. And we'll start again with a pearl body material and fold it right over. And this is a woven material, and Mylar, And a great material to tie with because it's very supple, very easy to deal with, keep track of, separates out, makes a nice tail. And what we're going to do here is just go forward, take the thread with us, hopefully, and we'll just go right on up the body. And because it's really wide material, the body, as you notice, goes really quick. And that'll do that. Now we'll just tie the underwing on, which is a red marabou, and it's shorter. It goes back to it's about a little more than a body length. Cut it to the length that we want, and we'll just tie that on. Then we'll put the black, which we've 3 feathers of the black overwing, and we'll measure it, and it will be a little longer than hook length. Cut that off. Again, that catch or soft glute material to keep it in place on the top half. Again, because you lose so many flies up here to these fish, we do things as quickly as possible. At this point, I'll put electric blue flash glue over the top of that. We'll just fold this material, take that thread up to the front, fold it in half, and we'll get a heavy wing over heavy topping over the top. Trim it to right to length there. And then we'll put the bead chain eyes, and we'll have completed the king fly. Okay, we use the bead chain eyes rather than lead because they leave a bubble trail there, hollow, and we'll figure 8 pattern them. Okay, and then I'll just finish this off right here. Here we are. There's your finished Sharp Seducer. And typically they strike it when it's crossing or when it's down there hanging. They jump all over it.
Fishing Bob's salmon pattern and most others is often done with sinking lines. Terry and Wendy Gunn demonstrate the best way to fish a full sinking line.
If I were to take one fishing rod and reel and line to Alaska, this would be it. This is a 9-foot, 8-weight, a good fly reel with a good drag system. Those salmon are real strong. Most important thing I have here is the fly line. This is a T300, a Jim Teeny T300 fly line. Basically what Jim has done here is he has joined a shooting head system to the running line all in one fly line. It makes it real easy to cast. I'm going to show you some tricks on casting this particular line. One of the things I always do is strip off all the line I'm going to use beforehand. The most important thing is you don't want to be spending a lot of time false casting this fly line. If you spend too much time false casting this fly line, you're going to end up wearing it.
The idea of this line is to get down quick, and what you want to do is do a quick false cast and throw the line hard. It's almost like chucking it because the weight of the line actually carries itself out.
All right, notice we have a color separation between the running line and the sinking portion of the line. The running line is the orange line, the sinking line is the very dark section of fly line here. Now, the most important trick to casting this fly line successfully is to break the suction of the water with this fly line. In other words, if I let this fly line sink and try to pick it up, it just doesn't work at all. So the easiest and best way to break that suction is to do a roll cast. So if, let's say I've completed the drift, I'm down here like so, I'm going to do an off-shoulder roll cast, I'm going to do another roll cast to get it in front of me, then it's a pick it up and just let the line go. Don't false cast this line, it's just one pickup, one haul, and let the line go, let the line weight carry itself.
So once you get the line shot out, the idea is to get the line down, throw a mend into it, get it down, do short strips. I've had some great success with this line on the Togiak River for silvers. I always have to rub that into Terry. And I've also used different types of lines on the Nushagak and different places for salmon.
Okay, the way you fish this line is a large min. That min helps get that sinking portion of the fly line down. Then my rod tip goes very low. Now I'm going to make short strips. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 has always been my magic strip. Those fish seem to like that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. By keeping this rod tip very low to the water, pointed right at where I think my fly is, it keeps me in much better contact with the fly. Then again, the way I'm going to transition from this is doing the roll cast, get it back in front of me, and one heave and let her go. Boom. Great way to catch salmon in Alaska. This line works very well in all salmon fishing situations.
After the kings show up in the rivers, the sockeye salmon, or reds as the Alaskans call them, won't be far behind. When they first reach fresh water, they're bright and shiny like all the other species. But by spawning time, their heads turn green and their bodies become a bright red, thus the native name. Sockeye are the most abundant of the salmon species in many river systems. Often found from late June through July, the flow of fish in some streams is hard to believe. Here on the Kenai River, the annual Sockeye Run is a long-awaited happening. Anglers from everywhere appear on the Kenai below the Russian River to intercept the migrating sockeye. Fred Talene is a guide for Alaskan wildland adventures, and he shows us how he uses the same teeny line that Terry Gunn demonstrated to catch sockeye salmon.
We're working the riffle with teeny T300 sinking tip fly lines and some small little streamer patterns with about a number 8 hook. And we just quarter our cast upstream, swing the fly line through and draw it towards the shoreline, and we're hooking fish on a regular basis here, having a great morning. The method here is just a simple roll cast upstream, follow the swing with the current, and hold your rod low into the side and wait for a little tension on the line and set the hook. Sockeyes are not a real big salmon, but in this fast current, they can put up a heck of a fight. And most folks on the Kenai use 8-9 weight fly rods. Other places you can get away with a lighter fly rod, a 5 or 6 weight even for sockeye. But in this fast water, there's just no way to put enough pressure on them with the 5 or 6 weight to turn them and keep them close to the bank. It's real important to follow the line as it swings in the current and draw the line tight. There he is. Look at that fish go. He's right out there in that heavy water. I have to follow him downstream here a little bit. These salmon, you need to get them on the reel and use the drag or palm your reel. And they can take such explosive runs that you got to be really careful or you'll get your knuckles busted on the reel handle. And I'm getting a little line on him. one is a male. You can see that he's got a little bit longer head and just strong as can be. And he's ready to go back up the river.
There are a variety of flies used for sockeye salmon. Common patterns imitate small fish or fish eggs. Many others are nothing more than some colored hair and a silver tinsel body. One of the most imaginative and successful offerings, however, doesn't represent any of these. Bob Shearholtz shows us a fly that most any of us could tie, given the materials and a few simple tools.
We're going to do a sockeye fly. We've talked about the sockeye and the sockeye are first to really show up in the river, and we reflect their eggs in a lot of rainbow patterns, but what they feed on is a plankton, so we'll tie one of those called the worm. It's a pattern that developed several years ago. It uses a ice chenille, and it goes real quick, and we'll just secure that thread back there, move the thread up, and about 8 or 9 wraps along the lead, and no underbody, anything else. It's just quick, move it, and we tie this in orange and a black also, and that's the worm right there. This is done so that quickly, because we lose about 300 to 350 flies a year to sockeye here. Each of the guides does if you get into them really well. So you want things that are simple and are taken aggressively by the sockeye.
Next to appear in the Alaskan rivers from July into August are the chum or dog salmon. Chums aren't as popular as other salmon because they get downright ugly after a while in the river. As they mature, the chum's color goes through a dramatic change, becoming increasingly camouflaged in greens, purplish reds, and barred with shades of gray. Their appearance belies their greatness as a sport fish. Rod manufacturers say it's the underestimated chum that's responsible for breaking most anglers' rods in Alaska. They are vicious biters and ferocious fighters. That's why you'll find fishermen standing in line on chum bars to get a crack at them. We have all perhaps heard stories about Alaskan bars. This is a different sort, a place where salmon congregate. They like the expansive, shallow, sandy flats of the river. This allows fishermen to use a broad range of methods.
We're fishing for chum salmon today, and we're on the lower part of the Alagnak. We're on a chum bar here. They call it Eagles Run. Pretty good chums. They're fresh in from the ocean.
John Linus is a guide for our host, Katmai Lodge. He ties a variety of colorful creations for going to the dogs.
Here we have, popsicles, just marabou flies, purple, orange, pink, a little bit of purple flash in there. Chums seem to like that. There's another chum pattern right here. This really has no name to it. Just flashy colors, pink, purple. Got some bee chain eyes on there just for a little weight. And we basically use, shades of pink, different shades of pink for that. And the fish, they're not really feeding. What they're doing is they're getting aggravated by the colors. They see those colors flashing, they don't like the flashy, and boom, they slam them pretty hard. There's no mistaking the hit on them.
I have a dry line on with about 8 feet of, I think, 12-pound test leader, just subsurface. We tried it with sinking tip. That was fun, and then earlier this afternoon they started popping up on the tops. For about an hour and a half, we got to pick them off the top. That was thrilling. That was a lot of fun. It was great.
Dick Bushnell of Oregon City, Oregon, brought his son to Alaska, and they found the chums an exciting challenge.
Just having a ball, father and son. The problem is he's catching more fish than me today. Is that good?
That's a tack
They come out, do a little fly fishing, they're hooked for life. Especially on these chums right here, hard fighting fish.
Right on.
Beautiful fish, fresh from the ocean right there, right out of Bristol Bay. This is a nice fresh fish right there, and when they get a little older, they'll turn green, and you can see kind of the purple verticals in them, and they'll get real purple with an orange belly on them. It's a real nice fish, probably one tide into the river right here.
So if you get the chance to head to Alaska, don't forget the chums. They're really not dogs at all. In fact, they're far from it. Bob Shearholz's chum pattern is worth remembering. It's not only tough, but versatile, and it's been used to catch every species of Pacific salmon and even a steelhead or two.
Okay, now we're going to tie the sockeye, or the chum fly, and I'll switch to the cerise thread to be somewhat consistent. We'll put a pearl body on the back half, and I'll fold that over the thread. Just take it up on the top and just secure it here in just a minute, and then I'll also use that as the back half of my body, as I said. And we'll just wrap, and we'll carry the thread forward, and I'll move my lead back. And there we go. This is a Pearl Fireworks, that same material that we used in several fireworks material that we used in several other flies, just a different color. Okay, now we'll put the chenille on, and that'll be next. And this is a depth ray cerise chenille. Very colorful. We'll secure it, just make sure we secure it really tightly there. Just carry it, again, carry the thread forward. Push that lead back, thread base. Trap it like we did the other materials we've talked about. Clean out the head. Now what I'm going to do here is put a thread base in, and we'll just take the feathers. Now what I do is to strip off just a little bit of the bottom there. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is we're going to prepare these feathers to put on the wing, and since we want them to be square on the end, I'll just dip my fingers in the water here, and then I'll just put a little pressure, and you can see that they're square. And then I'll just lay one on top of the other one, and we'll have 3 feathers for our wing. And any marabou wing fly that you want to put more than 1 feather in, this is an excellent tactic, and quick. And the water just, and that way all of the wing feathers will be the right length. And they're all matched at the end, which is what you'd like at the tip, if you will. Pick up all three at the same time, and then I'll just measure that. And the measurement I want is from the eye to the end of the hook. That'll be our wing length, and I'll just switch and trim that off. I put it on top, and I'll do that with a soft loop. It's called a soft loop. This is a quick and dirty fly right there. And now we'll just, this is a flash material, a bright cerise, and I'll just fold it over and tie it in at the front, and it'll form a topping, and we'll trim it the same length as the hook and the tail, and there we are. Quick, I'll finish the head. And we have a chum fly that very easy to tie, very quick, and very effective. We've even had some kings attack this, which amazed me, but
At the same time the salmon are showing up in the rivers, the rainbows, char, and graylings start to appear as well. Though these species are present in the river much of the time, anglers have a hard time finding them until the salmon start laying their eggs.
Let them swim over there and rest.
Yeah.
Fred Talene fishes rainbows and char all season on the Kenai. He has some favorite patterns he uses throughout the course of a season.
It's called a glow bug, and it's our adaptation. It's a little bit larger than a natural, of course, and tied rather shabbily, and it imitates a piece of salmon flesh or an egg or a piece of a carcass. This fly here is an imitation of a little salmon fry and can be fished either with a dead drift or a stripping method. And this is an effective fly early in the season, in June and into July. This fly pattern is a flesh imitation, and it's also made out of rabbit and marabou. And this fly is effective at all times during the season. This fly here is called an egg-sucking leech, one of the most famous Alaska fly patterns. And this fly also works all throughout the season. And then our other flies here are imitations of a little fish called a sculpin. They're little bottom dwellers, and this one is tied with lead eyes and a marabou body. This one's tied with a rabbit strip tail and a wool head. And these are fished on sinking lines and stripped right near the bottom, and they catch some of our largest trout. Well, what we're fishing here is a kind of a mid-river gravel bar. The main channel, there he is. Ooh, that feels like a rainbow. Yep, there he goes. We're fishing a mid-river gravel bar right around a bend. The main channel flows up towards this rock face. It scoops out a big channel. Oh, look at him go. It scoops out a big channel right along the rock face. And just upstream here, this gravel bar produces a lot of fish because they can come up on the bar to feed, and then when they're resting, they can drop down in the deep hole up against that rock face. These rainbows are some fun fish to catch. This one's not real big, but boy, they're sure fighters. This one's pretty typical of the trout at this time of the year. Just our basic pretty rainbows. Silvery sides with a little bit of green on the back and that pink stripe.
Bob Shearholtz has one fly that imitates a variety of things the trout feed on. Like so many of Bob's creations, it's simple, but extremely lifelike in the water. It's called a pseudosculpin, and you don't want to leave home without it.
since it's seen from the bottom, I like to put a little bit of crystal hair or flashabou under the tail. Okay, I'm tying in the tail material right over the top of that, and in just a second here I'll trim this and we'll go from there so that you can see what's happening. Now I'll trim that right away, and what I'm going to do here is to trim this in a V, and when I do that like this, it will keep that tail straight and keep it from wrapping around the hook when you cast. The next thing we'll do here is put the body material on, because we staged this fly, and I'll just fold this underneath like that. That folding tactic is a really interesting one because it allows you to do some things, secure them, and place materials right wherever you want to, and I use it on almost all the braided and all the flat tinsels and all that sort of thing. This body material is a material called Fireworks, and you notice I didn't put a thread body on there. And then what I will do is when you work with a rabbit strip, most times they talk about cross cut, which is a cut across the full width of the hide. I'd rather use a strip, and in order to do that, if you do one simple thing, which is to cut it at a 45-degree angle like that, and then just trim that edge off so you get so that the hide is clear and you get a good bite on the thread, you can tie that right in. But that allows me to orient the thread, or the rabbit rather, to the hook shank at an angle and palm it right up like you would a regular feather and have the same looks. Now what I'm going to do is to wet this glass of water over here, and I'm just pulling this rabbit here, and I'll put a couple turns at the head here to give it some bulk, and then I'll just tie it off here at the front, and then in a second we'll put the egg on. Okay, now we've put the chenille in. I'm making the egg right now, and what I'm doing is I just freed an area there in the head of that thread, and I'll just tie it in. At this point I'll just make that one wrap around there, and then I'll trap it on this side. And we just trim it off. All I'm doing is to dress this rabbit back to make sure all the hair is going clear and free. And there we are, finished.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, this one feels like it's a little bigger than the last one. I'm guessing by the way this fish is fighting that it's another Dolly Varden. And unlike the trout, the dollies, they don't jump as much, but they're very strong fish. And they'll just shake their head and hold out there in that current. They're real stubborn fighters. It's coming around over here. I'm getting him over here in the slow water. It goes back into the current again. There he comes. And there's a typical Kenai River Dolly Varden.
Talene will fish both a sinking and a dry line for char and rainbows. In the swifter water, when casting an attractor pattern, he'll use a full sinking line. When he can get off the main current, he'll switch to a dry line with an indicator and use some split shot to get an egg imitation to the bottom. We're not done with trout yet. We join Wendy and Terry Gunn on the Colorado at Lee's Ferry, Arizona. Wendy shows us how to cast and fish a dry line with an egg pattern. This works for the rainbows, grayling, and char all year in Alaska, but is unbelievably effective for salmon as well.
obviously we're at Lee's Ferry and not Alaska, but we're able to use this water to demonstrate the different techniques that we use on the Alaska waters.
For several years, I used to guide in Alaska, and every summer when it gets a little warm, Wendy and I still sneak up for a couple of weeks fishing.
Today we're going to be using, I have a typical 6-weight rod, which works very well in different areas in Alaska. I have a floating line, long leader. I also have a strike indicator all the way at the end, and a glow bug and split shot. This is rigged just with about 18 inches of tippet material to the glow bug from where the split shot is, and then of course the strike indicator up where the leader meets the line. The trick to using this rig is just getting a good dead drift.
In this situation, this rig would be used for sight casting to rainbow trout that are feeding behind the salmon on the eggs that the salmon are laying.
Now, one thing to remember when you're fishing split shot and strike indicator is you don't want to concentrate so much on that nice tight loop that we all work on. Because if you do, you end up catching the split shot and the fly on the indicator.
Well, when he's talking about increasing the size of the loop, you do so by increasing the range of motion of the rod tip. Stop it a little lower in front, stop it a little further back in the back. That opens up the loop wider.
All right, now the key to catching fish with this rig is getting a good dead drift. And you want to just keep your back cast, keep it open, mend your fly line back behind the strike indicator, and keep shaking out slack, and just drift it as natural as you can with the current.
And of course, if that strike indicator goes under, you set the hook.
Always looking for even just to hesitate, pull sideways, or go under. Now there's different places that you can also use this technique, and different tailwaters and lots of different rivers. In Alaska, they use it also for char. Well, they use it for char and grayling.
Sea run dollies.
Yep.
Any of the fish that are feeding behind the salmon, any of the fish that are feeding on the eggs of the sockeye salmon or the chum salmon or even the king.
And I think one thing that you just want to do is start with a short cast, get a good dead drift over that water, then make a little longer cast, get a good drift over that, and just keep working water and covering as much as you can.
The more water you cover, the more fish you're going to catch.
Now, when we're talking about mending line and shaking it out, I want to keep the indicator floating totally natural with the current, so I keep shaking out slack, feeding it with my left hand, shaking the rod tip, just to give it so it drifts totally natural out here.
What this technique does is allows her to get an extremely long drift and catch fish. And perfect example, you don't really have to worry about the slack here because most of the time the fish actually sets the hook himself.
Well, this was kind of a surprise.
Nice, pleasant surprise though, wasn't it, Wendy?
Yep. Never complained too much about a fish.
Wendy gives us a break from Bob's fly tying to do the egg pattern. Wendy is a professional tyer and supplies more than one Alaskan lodge with a full season's worth of what she calls glow bugs.
I like to use a 2X strong straight shanked hook. I like to pinch the barb first because there's nothing like wasting your time and tying a fly and then pinching the barb down and having it break. So we're going to cut a piece of glow bug yarn off, regular egg yarn, and then we use a micro yarn, which is a smaller piece. Start with the glow bug yarn, your eye-dot material right in the center. No, it's not painted in, it's tied. The trick to these is getting this material as dense as possible and as tight, and I achieve that by pulling and twisting. Just want to get it very, very small there. You want to pull and do a soft loop over the top. Use that to lock down your material on top of the shank. One more wrap on top, couple wraps in the front. Then we're going to go underneath here. I hesitated a little because I tie a few of these and I usually throw the bobbin. But you catch it, you want to pull it real tight. That'll make it real tight underneath, real dense, wrap around the front. Go ahead and do your half hitch or your whip finish tool. Cut your thread, pull this material real tight, straight up, and you want to cut it in a half moon and then pull it down. And you can achieve different sizes by how far away you cut from the shank and by how much material you use. 2 strands, of course, going to make a bigger glow bug, and so on. Well, as you can see, this is a pretty simple pattern. I tie a lot of these. If you look over here, I have all different sizes, colors. These are size 16, size 12s, and size 10. This is an easy pattern for people to tie. It doesn't require a lot of materials, as you see, thread, some glow bug yarn, that's about it. It doesn't take much, and they're used all over: salmon, steelhead, rainbow trout, whatever, any fish that spawns.
Coho or silver salmon are the last to show in Alaskan rivers. You have to make a choice if you want to pursue these acrobatic brawlers because they come so late, August through September.
There he
goes.
You got off?
He's gone. No, he's not off.
He's cranking.
He went that way. Yeah, he's...
You'll miss out on the sockeye and kings, but many people think it's worth it because coho are such aggressive biters and great fighters.
Going
he went that way again. Down at the backing.
If silvers are your choice, you'll have a number of ways to go after them. A variety of streamers work well. Here on the Kikluk in southeast Alaska, they've developed a big, bold yellow fly that is a consistent producer.
Big time.
My best one is my own personal fly that I came up with, the silver spanker. It's ice chenille, the Flashabou tail, and I put a little pink crystal flash in it once in a while. But we use popsicles, flash flies, just all different patterns. Just about anything real flashy the silver will hit on. They're not like most fish. I mean, these things are like piranhas sometimes. They'll come up and hit just about anything. Like using anywhere from a 7 to 9 weight rod, the 10-foot high-density sink tip line normally on normal river conditions with about a 4-foot leader.
Silvers choose somewhat calmer runs, pools, and eddies to hold up in before spawning. Once you find out where they're holding, it's just a matter of getting your fly in the right place. Instead of a fast-sinking heavy line, you can go lighter and simply wait on your fly to sink to the silver's level. When it gets to the strike zone, use a painfully slow retrieve. Silvers can be soft biters, and unless you're in direct contact with your fly, you'll miss more than half your strikes. On the other hand, they can charge and hammer a fly, and there'll be little doubt that you're bit. Like with most salmon, you'll want a strong rod, 8-weight or better, and a reel with a good drag system. Salmon routinely bust rods and burn up reels, so bring an extra.
Nice big one.
Beauty, huh?
Yeah, biggest one I think I've caught.
Have you ever seen silver fishing like this, Sharon?
No, never. It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
If you thought you were done with things that can catch silvers, you're not. One of the most exciting ways to take them is on the surface, and a special fly has been created just for that purpose. It's called a polywog, or wog for short. It's commonly made with elk hair, shaped like a disc with a marabou tail, and is tied on large salmon hooks, the most popular colors being chartreuse and pink. Obviously, at some point, an angler noticed how aggressive these silvers were and concocted this fly to take them on the surface. George Davis, owner of Camp Kikluk, tells us a little about how to fish the polywog.
They're not like most fish. I mean, these things are like piranhas sometimes. They'll come up and hit just about anything. Dry fly fishing, you just wake it out in front of them. It's almost target fishing. You're hunting for the fish. You see a fish, wake, you put it over there and you start waking that fly across, and they'll come up like an alligator and take it.
The wog is fished with only about 4 feet of leader, and the idea is to wake it across the surface. It's an unusual presentation that, for some reason, silvers have trouble resisting.
Yes, sir! Yes, sir!
Oh, he's heading for the stuff. Come this way. Come this way.
All right, all right. My hand is taking a beating on this guy. I'll tell you.
Chuck,
Okay,
have you ever seen silver fishing on the dry fly like this?
Never. Absolutely not. Absolutely. No, I have. Oh, jeez. I can't keep up. Please.
Chuck Davis and his wife, Polly, of Portland, Oregon, found the wog experience the angling thrill of a lifetime.
Completely sideways. Did you see that?
Got him. Oh.
Hey, Chuck. Good deal, man.
Way to go, George. Fantastic.
First silver on a pink polywog dry fly here.
First silver for me on a dry fly.
So if you ever get the chance to head to Alaska, make sure to include a wog or two in your arsenal. So that's our look at Alaskan fly fishing and some popular salmon and trout patterns. You should have an idea of what you're in for and what you might do to prepare for your Alaskan fishing adventure. Remember your seasons and go for the species you most want to catch. Kings are first, usually mid-June through July. Starting later in June are the sockeye, and they remain present through July in many rivers. Often starting in July are the chums, and they can still be around well into August. Humpy or pink salmon often mirror the chum run. We haven't dwelled on them as they're the smallest of the Pacific salmon and often so numerous that they're considered a bother. Finally, starting in August and running into September are the silvers. Rainbow trout and grayling are present in most rivers throughout the year, but concentrate behind the salmon once they start to spawn. The Arctic char or Dolly Varden show up in the rivers at about the same time as the salmon and hang with the rainbows. The flies you need depend on the species you target, and remember, things are a little bigger and bolder in Alaska. You're often fishing heavy water, and you need offerings like Bob Sherholt's ties that are weighted and can stand up to use and abuse. Also, you'll want to have a variety of egg patterns. They work on all the salmon species and on the trout, char, and grayling as well. Your leaders will be shorter and stronger than you might be used to. Only 5 feet for most of the salmon, with 30 to 40 pound butt sections and 15 to 30 pound straight leader. A lot of the trout fishing is done with 9-foot leaders, tapering down to 6-pound test. As for rods and reels, Terry and Wendy Gunn have given you a good idea of what you might need to cover the water. They recommend at least an 8 or 9 weight rod for salmon and at least a 6 weight rod for trout, char, and grayling. If you aren't used to tackling big fish, a fighting butt is a good addition to your salmon rod. Reels will get more wear in 1 week in Alaska than many seasons elsewhere. They need to be in shape and have a sturdy drag system. For salmon, a fly reel that can be palmed is the way to go. Your most important addition to your fly gear, outside of a rod and reel, may be new fly fishing lines. You'll need full sinking lines and a couple of weights. Most often, you'll need to go deep for salmon, and your line is the way to get there. One thing you won't have to buy is practice. Get used to your new gear and how to fish it before you go. Head out to your local water and make some casts. Imagine you're already in Alaska and learn how to get your line and your fly down to the fish. If you're a fly tyer, give some of Bob Scherholz's creations a try. Bob knows what catches fish and how to make a pattern that will hold up and deliver. Orange, pink, and red are among the most common colors of salmon flies. Make sure you've done your research on your destination, your lodge, and outfitter. Talk to as many people as you can who have been where you're going so that you're ready. Most importantly, look forward to your Alaskan fly fishing adventure. For most of us, it's the experience of a lifetime, one worth preparing for and anticipating.